The Heuser Hearing Institute since 1948, now with 5 locations. It's an interesting history, and the man who knows it all is my friend Brett Bachman, who is the CEO of Heuser Hearing Institute. Brett, welcome back to the show.
I appreciate you inviting me back. I never think I'm going to get one, but then you guys come back.
Well, you're doing so many positive things. It's all about hearing health. But I mentioned since 1948. State of the art now, 5 locations. So this involvement has been interesting, but you are proud of your history. Talk about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we had, when nobody was really doing it back in the day, you know, taking care of those kids that were deaf or hard of hearing and teaching them to evoke language and be able to express out to their community, and helping shepherd parents through that had children who were born deaf or hard of hearing, and kind of explaining about how that life is going to be like, connecting them to the different deaf resources that we had in the state at the time with Kentucky School for the Deaf, and then working through, if the parents wanted them to evoke language, helping them do that as well. And then moving forward into 1970, creating a synergistic partnership with our local school district, Jefferson County Public Schools. So that's like 53 years now we've been working with them, helping them improve children's lives, and it's been a great partnership. And then expanding to 2000 when we started seeing adults and moving on to expanding locations, because nonprofit-wise, there's not very many people doing audiology and hearing healthcare, and that's a definite need. We're seeing more and more of it as we expand out into the state, which is now we've hit 17 counties.
Yeah, we want to talk a little bit about that, about Kentucky Hearers. Okay, so if you need a hearing instrument, a hearing aid, whatever the case may be, okay, those dollars go to help out children, and you get state-of-the-art care, so don't be misguided here. It's all good. It's all good. But I want to talk about Kentucky Hearers because we talk about 5 locations here, but now you go throughout the state.
We do. All right. We do. So we've been primarily focused in on working with our rural Kentuckians, our fellow citizens that out there. We all know that it's a healthcare desert out there, and there's a lot of people that are working through that. Not very many people working on hearing healthcare, especially from the nonprofit perspective, and that's a different. We have a kind of a different mentality when we're treating our patients. We don't need to make a lot of money on the revenue. We go out there as a community service. We do a lot of community health fairs. We do a lot of those things, and there are some out there in the rural Kentucky, some hearing healthcare, but there's not a lot. And we want to make sure that our citizens of Kentucky that don't have access to that particular service do, and do it in a way that is taking care of the patient.
Okay, I'm going to bring you back to today, because there's an issue that you and I have discussed before, but I want to talk a little bit more about this. Is post-COVID syndrome. And you probably have a friend of yours who maybe it's tinnitus or some kind of hearing issue since COVID happened, whether they got COVID or is it from the vaccine. I don't know. This is all, to me, this is unprecedented. We're in new territory here, but I know there's a lot of folks with hearing issues. Are you finding this to be true?
Yeah, we have been, actually, and anecdotally, it's showing in our patients. Whether it was the vaccine or COVID, doesn't really matter. We treat people as they come in. So for us, what we've seen, what my doctors of audiology have told me, is there is an increase in tinnitus sometimes. Whether it was the COVID or the vaccine or just from the medicine to treat COVID, we don't know, but we're seeing an increase in tinnitus. We're seeing more people with vertigo and balance, and then there's just the fatigue. I mean, I had COVID for the first time 6 weeks ago, and I was tired for like 3 or 4 weeks afterwards. So all that kind of plays into there. And your ear is connected to everything in your head. It's your accelerometer. It tells you which way you're going, and so it really tells a lot about what's going on. And it can be more sensitive than people think.
Yes, and something else that I know, all this research, I cannot imagine how many people who before kind of put hearing health, on the back burner, and now they find that dementia and other mental disorders are connected to loss of hearing. To me, this is something, I don't mean to put a sense of urgency into people, but on one hand I do. Yeah. Because all the indicators are people who do develop dementia had some kind of hearing loss, or for the most part, correct?
Yeah, it's a precursor. I mean, and when you think about hearing and what it provides you in your environment, it provides you access and socialization, and so your mind is more active. You're able to have a more vibrant life. And when you become socially isolated because you've been hearing your whole life and then you're losing it, you don't really see what you're losing until you put in a hearing device, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know there were birds out there, you know, or you're avoiding restaurants because they're too loud, or you can't understand and mumble, or you're exhausted at the end of the day. That's one of the byproducts of you overcoming your hearing loss without a device, is your brain has to work harder to understand what's being said, and you get mental fatigue at the end. So it's always good to have a base level test to understand where it is. You can also, I mean, there's many places you can go to get that test. You can go to Heuser, you can go to your ENT, go to a lot of different places to get a hearing test. It's good to have that. Right around 50 earlier. I mean, especially, I know I grew up with thumping bass in the back of my car, so that's probably where some of my hearing loss is. And now with the kids today, they have those earbuds. I didn't have those earbuds. We had those big headphones that nobody wanted to wear, so now there are these little things and they're loud.
Yeah, my background in radio didn't help me. I had those headphones cranked up, and then you remember the big boom boxes that you held right here, right by your ear. That
I had a
was real
12-foot bass in the back. I mean, 12-inch basses in the back. The whole thing vibrated, you know?
So whether it be because of your past, or perhaps you want to make sure that your children's hearing health is in order, that's important, folks. So it starts early. Again, the Heuser Hearing Institute, okay, to make an appointment, give you a call. 5 locations, so it's convenient for everyone.
It is. It's really all around Louisville, and then we will also be posting when we're hosting the clinics in the different counties that we go to.
All right. Brett Bachman, thank you very much. I did not realize this because, okay, a little bit of a pre-sell, a little bit of a tease for our next segment. You were once a chef or a restaurateur?
I was. I worked for a company called Houston's Restaurants.
I remember Houston's. It was kind of like a Fridays. A little upscale, a little more upscale.
Like J. Alexander's is here.
Okay.
In fact, those restaurants are almost identical. I mean, to the T, to where, like, I could go in the kitchen, I know where stuff is stored.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, you're going to be impressed by our next guest, is Chef Brian Landry of the Kitchen Table. So this guy, I'm telling you what, he's throwing out a spread right now. We're talking. If you love bourbon, this is for the Bourbon Trail. This will be a stop you want to make. It's called the Kitchen Table. It's a partnership with Jim Beam Distilling Company. We'll talk about that next, and you'll meet Chef Landry coming up here on Wade Listens.